And we're live. Thank you everybody for joining. I just realized that I had this scheduled for PM and not AM. So sorry for those getting who hit that bell notification, and you may miss this. So my apologies. It happens. Anyways, today we're going to talk about the ceasefire. This should be very exciting for most of us. Also quite controversial. It's not all happy. There's a lot of bad that comes with this ceasefire, but at least we're going to see an end to the bloodshed. We're going to see the hostages come home. So we're going to dive into the details of the ceasefire. There'll be a little bit of analysis of what this means actually, right? What are the implications, the good, the bad, and the ugly? We'll then open it up for a Q&A and even do a call-in show if anybody wants to hop on to ask questions, challenge me, etc., etc., etc. Anyways, so let's hop into this. And those viewing, let us know where you're tuning in from. Awesome. So this ceasefire will be 3 phases. Now, keep in mind that the Israeli government has signed all 3 phases, so has Hamas. So all 3 phases have been agreed to. Does that mean we will see all 3 phases to completion? Not necessarily, but this is the intention. Phase 1, 33 hostages released, most alive, but not all. They will include all the women, including IDF, the elderly, and the sick and injured. Releases will start on the first day of the ceasefire, which will be Sunday, tomorrow, which will continue for 42 days. The last of the 33 hostages will come on the last day in exchange for 1,300 Palestinian prisoners. So we are releasing 33. Hamas is releasing 33 hostages, and in exchange, Israel is releasing 1,300 Palestinian prisoners. The reason this isn't done at once and incrementally is to make sure that, right, like Hamas, it's very important to them that the war actually ends. This is what they've been asking for well over a year now. This ceasefire that Israel agreed to has been on the table for a year plus. So the reason they're doing it incrementally is because they don't want Israel to be able to get the hostages and then resume the war. So 42 days is ample time for them to retreat. And for Hamas to regain control of the areas of the Strip. So this for them was very important, a very important part of this ceasefire, doing it incrementally. In that time, in those 42 days, Israel will fully withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor. This is the corridor on the southern border with Egypt. There will be negotiations over a permanent ceasefire. Phase 2, the rest of the hostages will be released in exchange for mass prisoner release. I'm not sure if there's a timeline set for that or if that's all in one, but that's the information I currently have on phase 2. Phase 3, the rebuilding of Gaza and complete withdrawal of the IDF. Now, again, this was a deal very similar to what we had in July, identical to the deal in July pretty much, and very similar to the deal we've had for now over a year. So we need to ask ourselves, what did Israel, what did we achieve in the past year that was so important to put the hostages through that, kill all too many more civilians and sacrifice our own soldiers for? What did we achieve? I'm not sure anyone can make the case that it was worth it. Now, in terms of this first round, just a little bit of the timeline, what we should be seeing. So the deal was signed on the 14th and 15th. On January 19th, that is tomorrow, the first 3 hostages will be released. They are all women. January 26th, that's a week later, 4 more female hostages will be released. And then 3 more hostages every 7 days until the end of phase 1. Now, I mentioned that this deal was on the table. So why was it accepted now? It really, all that happened was Israel capitulated on many points that they otherwise didn't. Hamas didn't capitulate on anything, really. So they've agreed, what they didn't agree to in July, they agreed to now, which is a full withdrawal from Gaza, leaving no troops or security zone, including Philadelphia corridor. It agreed to allow Hamas to rule Gaza. They will not be exiling the prisoners, but release them into Gaza. Israel has waived its demand for a list of live hostages. Israel has agreed to allow residents to return to northern Gaza while only symbolic security measures. Israel agreed to accept dead bodies in the first stage. So again, this year delay for what? For what? Now we'll get more into that, the cost of this war and what we actually accomplished, because it's very hard to see how any of this was worth it. In fact, I think, I mean, I've been saying this, but I think once we see what we gained from the past 15 months of our operation in Gaza, it's going to be seen as one of the worst decisions Israel's ever made. And I say that with a high degree of confidence. It's going to be a dark stain that will take a lot of time to heal from. The good is really that the hostages are coming home. The bloodshed will end, and we could finally start to heal from the past 15 months of death and destruction. Even, and again, you know, October 7th was 15 months ago, but the Israeli people have not gotten time. It's still been an ongoing conflict for them, even though there hasn't been daily bloodshed for Israelis. But the fact that we have over 100 hostages in captivity, that soldiers are dying, this takes a toll on all Israelis. And the, you know, Gazans, it's very clear the daily toll they've been taking the past 15 months. So they seem elated that they're finally going to have some quiet from bombs. The bad is that Hamas is still in power, and that Netanyahu is still in power, at least for now. Tens of thousands have been killed, probably for no good reasons, and dozens of hostages have been killed. So that's kind of where we're at with this hostage deal. Now, it could break after phase 1 or phase 2. There's no guarantee that this is seen to completion. Some speculate that Netanyahu is going to end it after phase 1 because this is quite unpopular amongst many of his supporters. It's been promised since October 7th that Hamas will be defeated. This was a false promise, one that many of us recognized to be a false promise from day one. But I get it. Like, if you were convinced by Israeli leadership and their war propagandist friends that Hamas will be defeated, only to now discover that they will not, I could understand the outrage. But that narrative that was pushed was essential to support the war. There would be no way to get not only the Israeli public or the international amount of the international community to support that amount of death and destruction only for Hamas to remain in power. Right? It was an essential narrative for support. But we knew that it would be a nearly impossible task. And furthermore, I mean, if the goal was really to remove Hamas from power, many have pointed out that the tactics and strategy we used to achieve that were completely wrong. We didn't try to control Gaza and govern it. We didn't try to replace governance. We went from neighborhood to neighborhood, caused a lot of destruction, moved to the next neighborhood. When we do that, Hamas just regains control in the neighborhood we just left. This has essentially been the strategy Israel deployed, which is not one that will ever defeat Hamas. So was this just incompetence on the part of Israeli leadership, or was this intentional? I don't know, but it was a massive failure. Because at the end of the day, what did we actually accomplish the past 15 months? Killing tens of thousands of civilians, sacrificing hundreds of our own, our soldiers, our fathers, sons, brothers, and friends. These are the people we sacrificed for this mission. We killed dozens of hostages in airstrikes, and the ones that are still living have now been in captivity for 15 months, suffering. Not only suffering being in Hamas captivity, but suffering from our own bombardments. For what? For Hamas to continue to rule Gaza. Yeah, we killed some Hamas, but we've further radicalized the population. They already started recruiting again. It's even speculated that they have more members now than they did on October 6th. Yeah, we destroyed tunnels, but those can be rebuilt. So what did we actually accomplish besides a massive toll on human life, a blow to our reputation globally, and a blow to the economy? There's There's no case that this was worth it or successful. It just wasn't. And we're gonna now need to deal with the consequences. Now, let's leave it at that for the first bit of my analysis. I see the comment section is taking off, so we'll do some Q&A. I think I've touched on everything, right? Oh, one last thing. So it's been speculated why Netanyahu agreed now and not 6 months ago, not a year ago. So people are saying that Trump has pressured him successfully into agreeing to this, and Trump is taking credit for putting pressure. And we know he did send representatives to the negotiations to make sure that Netanyahu agrees to the deal. But what does that mean, pressure him? How did he still get him to do it? Was it through threats? Was it through making future promises? So some have speculated that he made a promise that that they'll support a strike against Iran, or that they will allow them to annex the West Bank. This very well may be the case. So on one hand, if Trump was really successful in pressuring Netanyahu, credit where credit's due, he accomplished an end of bloodshed that the Biden administration was not capable of. But if the only way he achieved that was by promising something else that is inhumane, then he does not deserve much credit. Some have also speculated that the reason Netanyahu waited is because he didn't want to help Biden win. He decided to wait till Trump was elected and then would wind down the war. I don't know if that's true. I've seen people speculate. Okay, let's see. Edley Dawi, good to see you here. Ed is asking, can we have a new Zach versus Zach debate about the latest developments? Yeah, I think they might be down for that. I'm going to be in Mexico City next week, believe it or not. That's where Zach Foster lives. I hope he's okay with me letting the public know that. I think he is. So I'm going to meet him in person for the first time. We've spoken many times. I've had him on, I think, on 6 occasions now. So I'm going to meet him in person, and I'll see if he's down. I imagine he would be, and Zach Foster will as well. Edley Dawi said it said that they have 12,000 members now. No, so I don't know. It said that they've recruited 12,000 new members, and again, this is something we could have understood from very early on. And interestingly, Elon Musk said this in his interview with Lex Friedman. He said that when you kill civilians, you radicalize their families. It was only after he went to the trip to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro and then did a trip to Israel and met with Netanyahu that he just completely flipped and went super like whatever the official Israel narrative is. And it's not like he was anti-Israel before, but he was just a lot more honest in his critique. He went from actually seemingly seeing this objectively to just being another pro-Israel shill. I don't know. Look, spending time with Ben Shapiro and Netanyahu, they're both pretty convincing individuals, so it's possible he was genuinely convinced to change his mind. But he's definitely shifted his perspective. But he said something along the lines of, when you kill family members, or when you kill civilians, the family members become radicalized. And that is true. There's not a single family in Gaza that has not lost a loved one, not one. So recruiting new members, right? Imagine if your children are killed. What do you have to live for? You're much more likely to then join the terror organization. So yeah, we killed a lot of people. We sacrificed many of our own. And I'm not sure that they're all too much weaker than they were. Kylie Morrow says, will phase 2 and 3 of the deal actually happen? We can't know. We can't know. We can only speculate. I hope it does. But I think there's just too many unknowns. If I were to have to guess, I would guess that all 3 phases will go through. Sam Bland. Sam, good to see you here, man. Elon is being challenged more on X for the stance his cracks are showing. Yeah. Elon's very interesting. I really think it's just a very clear example of like a certain form of autism on full display. And I don't mean this in a mean way, but autistic people often have like an area of strength, which is a superpower. And then with that comes a great area of weakness. So when it comes to his ability to understand technology and innovate and build successful companies in multiple verticals, he stands in a league of his own. There's really nobody on his level at that, and credit where credit's due. And that will be a big part of his legacy. But with his strength comes an area of great weakness. And when it comes to his emotional maturity, his political commentary, I would say it's mediocre at best. And I think him buying Twitter and being more and more politically active there, we've gotten to really see that weakness. See, we have Dave Robinson tuning in from London. Good to see you here, Dave. Zohar says maybe worth reviewing the gains the settler right made, Ben Gurion Smotrich, settler right made during this period with regard to evacuating more Palestinian villages and annexing more territory. So Zohar, I'm very aware that there's been a stark increase in settler violence in the West Bank, and not all too much is done about it. I did see yesterday that 6 settlers were arrested by the IDF, so that was a positive development that something's being done, but certainly not yet enough. But I have not. I'm not too aware of what you're describing now. Can you drop a link? You're also welcome to hop on and share some thoughts about this. Poppy says, did you hear what Blinken said about how Hamas has recruited as many new members as it has lost? Yeah, that's actually where I was saying that from. I saw that Blinken said that as well. Yeah. Sam Bland's asking, but then what will happen to Netanyahu after the 3rd phase? Technically, we should go to elections, and does he have enough support to maintain control? It's unclear. It seems, who did an analysis on this? It may have been Shael, Ben Ephraim, but it seems like he doesn't have enough for a coalition, but I'm not sure the opposition has enough for a coalition unless Bennett decides to join the race. If Naftali Bennett joins, then the opposition can form a coalition. But hopefully this is the end of Netanyahu. Even my sister, who she lives in Israel, she's pretty apolitical. She told me yesterday, she said, if Netanyahu gets reelected, she's leaving Israel. She said she sees no future for the country with that leadership. And I agree. I think Netanyahu has been proven to be one of the single worst leaders in Jewish history. He will be remembered as such. One of the single worst leaders in Jewish history. By the way, yesterday I got feedback from a Palestinian viewer. He said that he thinks I should work on pronouncing Arabic words better. He said he feels like sometimes I pronounce Arabic words with an Israeli accent or an American accent, and the Israeli accent has a potential to turn off some viewers. So I found that to be interesting feedback. The problem is, first of all, I'm just not good at accents, but we do ha, but in Arabic it's more of a throw. It's a ha, like Hamas, right? In English you say Hamas, in Hebrew you say Hamas, and in Arabic you say Hamas. I got to work on it, but noted. Thank you for pointing that out. Noted. I will work on it. And if any Arab speaker here wants to help me, I would appreciate it. Right? Even the channel. Our channel is Sulha. In Hebrew, it's Sulha. In Arabic, it's Sulha. Got to work on it. Anyways. Poppy says, in your defense, Adar, Arabic is really difficult to pronounce. Yeah, I agree. Thanks for that. Poppy also asks, isn't Bennett even worse than Bibi? The Palestinians. He's considered farther to the right of Bibi. He's very clear about one state that's a Jewish state, which one state from the river to sea that's Jewish. There's not many options for what that would look like. It's either requires mass expulsion or it's de facto apartheid. Right? Let's be clear about that. But he was prime minister for some time before his coalition collapsed. And it was actually very interesting because he started pushing forward an initiative called reducing the conflict. It was, I believe, a set of 6 or 7 things that we can do in the West Bank to drastically improve the conditions for Palestinians living there. And I found that to be fascinating for somebody who's considered to the right of Bibi. He actually had a plan to change the status quo, right? Netanyahu has just been maintaining this unsustainable, immoral status quo for decades. Bennett, with whatever critique we want to have of him, he actually has a vision for changing the status quo. So is he my ideal prime minister? No, obviously not. But am I willing to give him a shot to see what changes he can bring? Certainly. We need some new blood in there. Sam Bland says, I can help you anytime on the Arabic pronunciation, brother. Awesome, cool. Sam, we got to get you back on for another stream as well. And I know, we spoke briefly, but I don't want to give too much information without your consent, but we very well may be in the same city next week. So hopefully we get to hang out then. I'm fucking doxing people live, huh? Left and right. We're going to go looking for Zach Foster now. Sam says anything done unilaterally will keep us at square one. I agree for the most part. I think that's sound. Everything we need to do needs to be bilateral, unless it's something super radical and it's simply the decision of saying one state from the river to the sea, all Palestinians are full and equal citizens. I mean, that's a unilateral decision that Israel can just do. It's just the chance of that is, let's round that down to 0. But yeah, generally speaking, I agree. Bilateral. And in fact, I would say one of the failures in Gaza was that our withdrawal was unilateral. It shouldn't have been a unilateral withdrawal. You lose all leverage. I think the withdrawal should have happened, but it should have come with an actual peace agreement and a recognition of statehood, or at least it should have been used to negotiate some better terms, not just pull out and see what happens. Pull out and see what happens. Could lead to unintended pregnancies. Who do you feel which party would be best? As Dawi says. Well, I would say do they change their names? The Meretz combined with another party, they're now called the Democrats, which I think is a dumb name because why replicate the name of a party that in itself is trash? So it's a dumb rebranding in my opinion, but that's the most left party in Israel that has any relevance. And they're not super far left. Like, let's be clear, they're not like a anti-Zionist socialist, right? They're not super far left, but the political spectrum in Israel is skewed very far to the right. So the most legitimate left-wing party is really just like moderately left of center, if we're to be honest. So I would like to see them in power, but that's not realistic. They're nowhere near popular enough. But it is possible they will be in government. You then also have Ram, which is the party run by Abbas, not Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the PA, but wait, don't his name? Do they have the same name? Their names are almost identical. Oh no, sorry, Mansour Abbas. Okay, yeah. Mansour Abbas, he's a revolutionary figure because for decades you've had Israeli Arabs, also known as Palestinian citizens of Israel, depending on who you ask and how they identify. They've never agreed to serve in the coalition. There's always been this protest that we will engage in politics, but we will always be in the opposition. Israeli governance is similar to British, where it's a parliamentary system where you have a coalition and an opposition. Ram was the first to really say, or Mansour Abbas was the first to say, no, we're going to join the government. We're going to join and we're going to make change from within. And he was the first Palestinian in any coalition. And his party is somewhat Islamist even, but he was literally he was part of the government that Bennett ran, just to show the diversity of that government. So I think because Palestinian citizens of Israel make up 20% of the country, good to see them have representation in the next government. So I would like left-wing representation. I would like Palestinian representation, and we would need also right-wing representation, obviously, because that's the majority of the country. So the question is, who's the most sensible right-winger? And, you have people like Lapid and Gantz, which I would say in Israel they're considered centrist, but they are to the right. They would certainly be preferred to someone like Netanyahu. Bennett, I think, is a wild card. I think he could go either way. So let's wait and see. Zohar, which one is Chadash? You're going to need to remind me. It's a party that I seem to not have mentioned. But just, I think there's something very clear on display here that I'm actually by no means an expert on internal Israeli politics. I know the basics, but I'm nowhere near as well as informed about internal politics as I am with the conflict. That's just been a greater area of interest of mine. So Zohar, yeah, please inform me. Oh, whoa, you're talking about Othel Kasif, TB, and okay. But yeah, hold on. Let's invite you on. Let's hear, because I don't know enough. Here, I'm dropping the link. I'm dropping the link, and if anybody else wants to hop on, you're welcome to. Just the rule is you either show your face or you give yourself a nice thumbnail, and then Zohar, are we premature? Sorry, I almost added you prematurely. I see a blank screen, but we're long overdue for one. There we go. Zohar, long time.
Hey, how are you?
Wait, your audio's off and your lighting is atrocious, but we could manage. We could manage with just the audio. If lighting not being great's fine, but let's try to get that audio fixed.
You can't hear me.
No, still can't hear you. Press the settings button, and then there should be an audio button, and then you got to connect the proper input one.
This one? Can you hear me now? 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 No? Nothing.
No, not hearing you, man. Sorry. Oh, wait. Say something.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, wait. I've been on mute this whole time.
Oh, so you're on. I can hear you fine.
Wait, but was this, I literally, wait, let me think about what I did wrong. I literally had the stream playing. There was no feedback. You guys didn't hear feedback, right? Wait, no, if I was on mute, that wouldn't happen. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been on mute this whole time. That's hilarious.
I'll take it.
So I was fine. You were the one, right?
And
So
for some reason, my Google Home thought I was talking to her. She said, "I'll take it." Okay, chill. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Zohar. Zohar, what's up, man?
Good, man. Good. How are you?
Good. Doing it up. I just started a new company, so I'm very busy with that. People are wondering what am I doing in Mexico if I'm so busy? I actually am most productive when I isolate myself. So I actually come to these remote places just to not get distracted, just so I can do deep work. So I'm not in Mexico on vacation. I'm in Mexico working.
Nice, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. Did you hear about what we're doing?
Nope, not really.
Okay. Well, we're building a platform called headon.ai. It's a platform built with the purpose of connecting people from opposing viewpoints. The conversations are then assisted with an AI facilitator, right? We believe that we found a way to scale civil discourse to millions of people around the world using AI. because scaling civil discourse is very hard because it requires facilitation. There's a limited amount of facilitators. So that's what we're working on. And Sam Bland, who's been here in the comment section, she's actually one of our advisors. So
Oh, wow.
just reference, yeah.
This actually reminds me, do you know the work of Michael Sandel?
Michael's in depth.
A Harvard professor for philosophy.
Okay.
He wrote the book, The Tyranny of Merit.
No, I'm not familiar.
Anyways, there's a recommendation for everyone on the stream. There's an entire course called Justice on YouTube. The entire Harvard course is available online for everyone to listen to. And that's Michael Sandel giving lectures. It's fascinating, philosophy of justice. And what they did during COVID, because of students being from all around the world and not being able to deliver lectures on campus, is that they facilitated the same type of classroom discussion and debate of this methodology that I've only seen this Michael Sandel guy uses in order to try to engage with students on the same level and create this mass experiment of democracy and figuring out what is the best outcome. It can be agreed on everyone. It's fascinating. I really advise you to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wrote a note that to look into him and even reach out. So thank you. So yeah, what your Hadash party is that a new formation?
No. That's the new version of the Israel Palestine Communist Party.
What was their old name?
Oh, Maki, I guess.
Okay.
Communism Israel, משהו כזה.
So is that? But did they don't get enough mandates to be relevant, do they?
Actually, the way it goes, the anti-Bibi bloc cannot cannot stand on its own with a coalition, considering all the right-wing parties, unless they join together with Hadash party. And their coalition fell last time because they would not compromise or talk about the Palestinian or the occupation at all, which is the basic standard for Hadash to join the coalition.
Interesting. And I mean, I guess that's not surprising that would be rejected by who's currently dominates politics in Israeli society. So that would mean that Abbas essentially agreed to not make it too big of an issue.
Yes,
you would think, and his focus is probably more so on working with Palestinian citizens, working on elevating Palestinian citizens of Israel, more so than talking about the West Bank.
His constituency in the north of Israel, the
right.
Palestinian Israeli villages in the north. Yeah.
Well, I don't think anything's going to change in the sense of agreeing to be in coalition with them.
But this is everyone from that side of the Israeli political spectrum has been crying out, listen, you cannot form a coalition just on the Israeli liberals, because the right wing and the conservative, they're joining together to have the same interest. The liberals cannot sit on their own. With numbers, we're just not enough people. So you have to get the Israel Palestinian Arab community to also vote for you. They will not vote for you unless you're going to raise up the occupation as part of your agenda. And no political party can now run for election and not discuss what is their plan for the day after.
Well, I mean, clearly they can, because they still haven't been talking about it, right? Like even we did have Bennett. We did have an anti-Netanyahu bloc in power for some amount of months.
That's the pre-October. That's you're talking October 6th.
So, right. Do you think that the left, anything left of center has shrunk since October 7th?
So, I think we have to look at it in a broader lens, as in there was massive national tragedy that happened, and months and months of propaganda and pro-war a lot of misconceptions and lying to the public about the prospects of winning the war and the importance of Philadelphia Axis or the Netzarim Axis and this tunnel or that tunnel. Now all these lies are coming out that and people will have to be accountable. And then perhaps people will start questioning whether the military option that we have been pursuing for decades now is the one that will keep us secure in the long term. I think.
I mean, I am hopeful but not optimistic that that is a shift that we will see, that we are tired of war and we look through other means. I tweeted something yesterday, which it's impossible to tweet anything that doesn't get some backlash, but I want to just read it because I think it's relevant to what you're saying now. Defeating Hamas militarily is very challenging but possible. Negotiating peace with Hamas is very challenging but possible. The difference is that one approach ensures massive death and destruction, while the other doesn't. How about we try something different this time? Now, you'd think that's pretty sensible. We literally tried to defeat them militarily. We can't. We haven't been able to. It's taken a massive toll. So I'm suggesting a different approach, right? Shouldn't be anything radical about that. But people, unsurprisingly, are upset. They're saying, what do you mean you can't negotiate with terrorists? They're clear that they want to destroy Israel. It's like, okay, fine, provide a different alternative, you know? So what they don't recognize is the only constant is change, and somebody might say something today and they could shift on that tomorrow given a change in conditions. So who would have thought that al-Julani, right, who was a leader of the al-Nusra Front, an al-Qaeda faction, is now, at least the way he speaks, one of the most progressive leaders in the Middle East, if not the most progressive, right? The way he speaks puts him far to the left of Netanyahu about this pluralistic society for all people. That's literally a shift that happened in just a few years. People are not as deep in their ideology as they often
this
seem.
is where
we need to remember.
This is where you start understanding some benefits come with age. I think when you witness some of these conflicts as they unfold, and you see how some terrorists suddenly get praised to become Nobel Prize winners a year after, and people who used to be terrorists are suddenly members of parliament or consultants in some, I don't know, high risk company somewhere. Then you start understanding the bigger picture, that there's a lot of rhetoric going along. And when you're younger, you're more susceptible to actually falling for it and really dehumanizing the other side. Like, we are the righteous ones and the other side is evil and there's no way we can negotiate. But yeah, then you understand that all these people are sitting together in the same 5-star hotel negotiating some peace deal sometimes after.
Right. That kind of reminds me of it's not quite the same point, but it's tangential, that about like the behind the scenes of what really happens in politics when there's the viral video of Trump and Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral, kind of whispering and joking and laughing. And like, this is the same Trump that they've been telling us for years is a fascist, literally a Nazi that we need to fear. And again, there's immense amount of legitimate critique of Trump, but, you know, we're told one thing about him, and then we see they're all buddies behind the scenes. And I guess a different interpretation of that is like, what do you expect for them not to be civil, for them to be mean to him? So like, I hear
that's the thing, that they unleash all this rage and hate and anger towards the other side. Like, they're evil, they're fascists, they're communists, they're all these things. And then they manage to be civil with one another, but we cannot manage to be civil with other people around the streets because we keep hearing this rhetoric coming out from our leaders. So it's it's a bit tricky. Yeah.
But what you said about age, I'd be interested in understanding how that actually works, because I'm not convinced people consistently with age become more understanding of some of these more nuanced concepts. Like, generally, the younger generation is the most liberal, and then they become somewhat more conservative over time. But that might not be the right way to look at it, because you could become more conservative yet become more nuanced, right? So I'm not sure that these are mutually exclusive, but I don't know. If we look at the landscape,
I'm just saying again.
Yeah.
I think that when you're older, you can maybe understand how these things can get resolved. As in, you see other conflicts around the world, and you understand that you saw Gaddafi being a terrorist on one day, and then a hero on another one, and then a terrorist on the last one. And you saw Saddam Hussein being praised by the United States in the 1980s, and then being cast away as a traitor and a terrorist in the 90s. You just have to be old enough to see all these changes. If you pay enough attention,
right?
I guess
That's what you're saying. Age in the sense that it gives you enough data points to
exactly
be convinced that this is possible. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, and Hamas has tried to. They've approached Israel, I believe, on 5 occasions for some kind of truce negotiation. And it's not that the terms of the truce would be easy for Israel to accept. And maybe when you get an offer, you can always counter it and meet in the middle, right? It's not like the first offer is what needs to be accepted. But there was no negotiation. There was no attempt to find some middle ground deal to have a truce. It was outright rejected every single time. So,
but this is the first point. This is why I came on this thing on this stream now. While we have been losing soldiers' lives and hostages, never mind the destruction on the Palestinian side, the settler segment in our society has gained a lot during this year and a half. They annexed more land and they evacuated more Palestinian villages that were a thorn in their garden. They have been winning all this time. They've been supporting the, how do you call it, Garinim Toranim, whatever it is, the local civil police forces that Ben Gvir has been sponsoring. They've been making a lot of gains all this time, including the Haredim.
What villages have been?
I put it in the links in the comments. Where I'm going to get just check out the largest land grab.
Yeah, please
just
send me.
Make it a charger. 1 sec.
Yeah, Sam's pointing out that Assad was praised a decade ago and now pushed out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Assad was seen as this, like, what was he, a doctor, a moderate, doesn't even want power. He's just this humble guy that inherited power from his father. That was the narrative. And then very quickly he became the butcher that needs to be removed by all means necessary. And, you could say that maybe we got the wrong impression of him and we changed our minds, but there's a pretty consistent pattern. There's actually 2 things at play here. One is the idea that people change over time pretty consistently. The other is how people are perceived is often dependent on the media and how the establishment wants them to be perceived. So those are 2 things that certainly are very important to take into consideration. Cool. Welcome back.
Cheers. Do you happen to to check out the link that I showed earlier about the largest land grab?
I seem to have missed that.
Wait a second.
I can't copy it. Can you send it in the? You'll see there's like a tab for. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. The Guardian. Okay. Israel has approved largest West Bank land grab in 30 years, Watchdog says. Peace Now says approval for more than 12 square kilometers is the biggest. But so, okay, I mean, this is obviously problematic, but were people actually, late in June, Israel Socials shows 11 homes and other structures in El Kia, a village in the occupied West Bank, leaving 50 people homeless. Well, in early July, okay, so there certainly has been displacement.
You don't follow Mr. Kimla Kibush by 9, looking the occupation in the eye, and these accounts on Twitter that document each one of the evacuations in each one of the villages?
Clearly not deeply enough.
Yeah. I don't think these accounts are being pushed by Musk or his algorithm.
It's possible. You wanna shout out some accounts for people to follow?
Oh, wait a second.
Drop them in the.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Clean, that's a good one.
No, yeah, I've been for the past 15 months. My main focus is not actual Israel Palestine stuff. It's my day-to-day entrepreneurial ventures that I have commitments to, and then on the time I can put available has been really just Gaza, primarily Gaza, analyzing the death toll, understanding the war crimes, the extent of what's going on. So yeah, I've actually neglected, for the most part, internal politics and what's going on in the West Bank. Seen it on a very surface level, but have not done the deep dive.
That's fair.
Oh, but there's this guy. His name is Andre. He does good work from the West Bank. You know Andre?
The blonde guy, the Russian guy.
Yeah. But he's a citizen. Yeah, Andre. So he's actually going to be on the stream next week. We're going to have him on.
Nice.
Yeah. So he's doing good work.
Oh,
Shout out to Justin for connecting us. But yeah, Andre seems like a great guy, so we're going to have him on. So it's interesting timing that we're now talking about the West Bank, because next week is the first stream we've done in a very long time that is focusing just on that. I've gotten a bunch of recommendations. People want me to speak to Haviv Rettig Gur, who they say is a right-wing Israeli, but he's intellectual and engaged in good faith. And people think that would be an interesting conversation. So I haven't reached out to Haviv yet, but I'm planning on to. So for everybody who's recommended him, hopefully we could have him on in the next few weeks.
Do you happen to come across Jake Neufeld?
Oh yeah. Jake and I are in touch. Yeah, I connected him. He recently had Rudy on. I introduced them.
Yeah. I keep asking him, why don't you bring Israelis on? And of all the Israelis, he found Rudy.
Well, it's to his defense, he's the bigger the name, the more the appeal.
I am aware.
But he's offered me to come on for a debate, but he asked me to like, he said who specifically do I want to debate, and it's not like I have anybody specific.
Could have debated Destiny, because clearly you know better than him.
Yeah, but again, Destiny's somebody like, my name's not big enough for Destiny to be interested. In fact, a lot of people have suggested that Destiny speak to me, but for some reason he's never given me the opportunity.
Well, I would love to have the opportunity.
Lonerbox though, I was on Lonerbox stream. He's at least willing to.
All right.
But yeah, maybe I'll still do it. I am into debate Joseph Cohen again.
Who's that guy?
Israel Advocacy Network. We had a debate a few months ago. And look, I say debate, but those who watch the show know that even when I'm engaging in debates, I don't try to like dunk on people hard. I don't try to do those gotchas. It's just giving a good pushback without being too combative. But there's certain topics that I take much more personally, like people engaging in atrocity denialism. So Joseph Cohen, I would say I was a little bit harder on him than I normally am when I do these debates. But we spoke about, is Israel using excessive force? That was the debate. And we agreed to do a round two specifically about the death toll in Gaza. Nobody has agreed to debate me on that, because that's not a matter of opinion, really. I guess it's how you interpret data, but
yeah, it's not. It's whether you accept data sources or not. It's not.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's been very interesting, because there's been very little topics that I don't find somebody willing to debate. When it comes to the death toll in Gaza, I've challenged at least a dozen people now, and I don't get takers. And the reason is, my theory is, if you actually do the research, you're either going to reach a similar conclusion to me. Well, I think that's the most likely conclusion. So either you reach that conclusion and there's nothing to debate, or you're uncomfortable with the conclusion, so you just go silent, or you haven't done the research and you're not willing to debate, which makes sense. Why would you want to debate something you haven't done the research? So Joseph Cohen finally did agree, but I'm just wondering the relevance of it now, just with the ceasefire and all. And, once the dust settles, we will get a much more accurate death toll. So I'm not sure there's any purpose in doing that, but I'm considering it. And then there's this this guy on Twitter that keeps telling me that I'm completely wrong, so I keep inviting him on, but he seems to keep finding an excuse why he doesn't want to. He says I don't give him enough time to prepare. But we'll see.
Again, I really, when engaging on these things, I find that when I watch debates, it normally turns into a circus because you have two people that are holding on to their grounds and are not going to be convinced of anything. Because if they do not agree on death toll or whether you can trust the Palestinian health ministry or whether the UN reports are truthful or not, so there's no point for debate. You're just presenting arguments to the audience for them to decide whether they can be convinced or not. But yeah, it can be.
Although I will tell you this, I think I've seen a shift in some who are super pro-Israel have shifted their narrative once being presented with the argument I made on the verifiability of certain data that comes out of Gaza. And I've actually seen a noticeable shift, especially after I put out the debunking of the Andrew Fox report, because it makes a very clear case that there is verifiable data. And the shift I've seen has been, it hasn't turned people against Israel, but they're no longer making these claims that have no basis to them, like 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio. I've seen that narrative, and I'm not taking full credit. There's certainly many other activists saying similar things, but I have seen a shift there. Like it used to be much more popular for people to say that the civilian to combatant ratio, the average in other conflicts is 9-to-1, which is bullshit. There's no basis to that. So that we've seen a shift in people claiming that. There's less people saying that. The 1-to-1 also, I'm seeing less people say. So I'm seeing some shift there.
Yeah, I think it's I listened to Yosef Haddad make this claim in the Oxford Union. I don't know if you watched this debate.
I did not watch that. No.
Oh wow! If you want to watch it, I watched all of it, man. It's wow. It's the best of the worst. There's no other way to describe it.
No, I mean between him and Mossab, it's just I value my time too much to.
Fair enough. At least
no. If you think it's worth it, I'll definitely check it out. But I just be cringeville all the way.
But that's the issue exactly. That you see Yosef Haddad proudly make these arguments and he made this claim. Everyone here says as if they care about the women and children. It's because you useful idiots, you don't understand the ratio and the 2-to-1, and it makes sense. And everyone's like, what the fuck is he saying? Like, he didn't even understand that he's saying that it's, so if you kill 2 kids or 2 women to a terrorist, that's fine. That's and just,
I mean, and in reality, it's likely closer to 5-to-1. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah. Never mind the reality. Just he spoke about killing and death in such nonchalant way. They didn't understand like what the general public is thinking even. And this is the person that they sent to represent Israel. And then you understand the decline of using this. How no one cares about the ratio when you're talking about you already killed 40,000 people,
right?
And we don't care about the ratio. It's just not cool. But yeah,
right. It's It's been hard for me to see, our people become so out of touch with reality, only to continue to defend something that most of the world sees as absolutely indefensible. And look, and there seems to be a massive cognitive dissonance that's beyond just Israelis supporting the war or pro-Israel people supporting the war. We're taught our whole life that human lives is valuable and that human beings deserve the right to life. In fact, in America, it's an inalienable right, the right to life. And most countries have a similar concept that you deserve the right to life. And we value life to such a great extent that we even have immense debate over taking the life of somebody guilty, right? Capital punishment is not a black and white issue. This is something debated in many Western countries. But then when it comes to war, suddenly we have a category called collateral damage. Collateral damage is essentially a human being that lost their right to life, an innocent human being that lost the right to life. But we created a new category to kind of just throw them. It separates. It's a word we use to separate us from the reality of what's happening. Now, I could see somebody making the case that some war is necessary, and in war you will have some amount of civilians dead. I can understand that case, but if you're gonna take away somebody's right to life, especially in the 21st century, you need a damn good justification to do so, and you need to prove that there's no better alternative, right? So our standard for how we value life in day to day should be very similar to how we value life in war. And I think the world sees this, right? We're taught our whole lives that killing is bad. And then we see, imagine being a young American, right? You don't know too much about the world, but your whole life you're taught that killing is bad. And then you see the country that you're a citizen of supporting and funding the mass killing of civilians. That's going to radicalize you against the system, against the establishment. So it makes sense that we're seeing this international outcry. It makes perfect sense.
I would just say this, and this is about the wider lens that I was talking about earlier. If you speak to Americans, if you spoke to Americans the months following 9/11, they were not exactly peace-seeking or imagining any kind of debate happening with the Taliban or Al Qaeda or whomever it is they were told was responsible for the attack that they experienced. Noam Chomsky wrote Manufacturing Consent back in the 80s for a reason.
Right.
The vast majority of the population has no idea what is going on. They're busy living their lives, trying to take care of their family, working in jobs, and they catch a glimpse of some news maybe on the evening channel where they come back home. Unless there's something extreme, they're not aware of who is running things, what is happening, who owns what, and what agreements are being done behind the scenes. And then suddenly something big happens, and all the channels are telling them, all the shit that you're experiencing, these are the people to blame. Not us, the people in power, not us, the people responsible, not the people who've been running things for all these years, and some other people on the other side of the border. And right now, when you talk about the value of life, what Israel has been doing in Gaza, never mind the value of life if we did not have hostages there. Let's say that the Israeli government and the soldiers really could not care about Palestinian humans at all. But we had hostages there, and we were bombing indiscriminately, killing our own hostages. So it's not only that we stopped valuing the lives of our enemies, so-called, but we started putting the idea that there's a national goal above the lives of individual citizens that are inhabiting it. And this is something that now the Israeli public is coming to terms that they're not willing to accept. I feel, at least. That all these stories are coming out that all this war has accomplished nothing, as you mentioned earlier. That it cost us lives and hostages and soldiers. The one that did not lose their lives are injured. They're not injured. They're mentally injured, and they come back with PTSD. All these things for nothing. We're exactly in the same point that we were at
for nothing.
2 years ago.
Yeah. And let's make it clear, just so to make it clear to the viewers, you and I are both Israeli, but we represent the minority position in Israeli society. Let's just put that out there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I see we have a few more comments. Vosh Hate Watcher says, "Hey, you call John Spencer a propagandist, but he's the chair of urban warfare studies at West Point. Is that not a prestigious title? How was he able to obtain that?" I would actually say there's very little connection between obtaining certain titles with your level of honesty. Let's just take an example. Think of the US president or the leader that you despise the most. Well, they're in a prestigious title. Does that speak to the quality of human that they are? No. In fact, I would go on to say that to be in the position that John Spencer is in, you need to be supportive of US foreign policy and the official narrative. You're not going to have somebody in his position who's going to be anti-war and critical of a major U.S. ally or U.S. foreign policy. So somebody in John Spencer's position can either remain silent or speak a similar tune to what John Spencer's doing. There's no other option when it comes to that position. So it's actually going to skew to a specific narrative, people in that position. Now, why do I call him a propagandist? Because he just very clearly is. He pushed the 9-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio on many occasions. If he had any understanding of urban warfare, well, I'm not. He does have an understanding, but if he's actually like a thinker on the topic and an intellectual, then he should know that 9-1 is bullshit. And let's say he got it wrong, then he should make a public correction. He's repeated the 9-1 lie on multiple occasions and never came out to correct himself. He also will often point to the fact that Mosul had a higher civilian to combatant ratio than Gaza, but he doesn't mention that a third of the civilians killed in Mosul were killed by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. He conveniently omits that, or he doesn't know that. It's been pointed out to him. He should make a public correction. He also pointed to the fact that the population in Gaza increased in 2024, but that also was a bullshit claim. How did they reach that conclusion? You look at the CIA fact book projection of population growth. They do this projection many years forward. So let's say you do a projection in 2020 of what the population in 2025 is going to be. Clearly, it'll be more than 2024. This projection doesn't account for tens of thousands of people being killed, right? So again, that was irresponsible for John Spencer to promote that. And maybe he made an honest mistake, but it was pointed out to him he should make a public correction. So as far as I'm concerned, anybody who's in a position of authority, who's promoting false information, whether intentional or not, should be held accountable. And if they refuse to publicly acknowledge their mistakes, well, that's just unjustifiable and indefensible. And these people, should be seen for what they are, charlatans and propagandists. And yeah, I stand by that. And by the way, John Spencer has been, he was on Kim Iverson's show a few months back, and Kim asked if I can come on as well so we can have a conversation. It wasn't framed as a debate. He said, I have, a former IDF soldier wants to talk to you. He refused. Someone else reached out to him to see if he'd be willing to engage in a conversation. He refused. That's also something to pay attention to. What platforms are they willing to go on? Are they willing to engage in a debate? Right. And not everybody, again, not being willing to debate does not mean that you're wrong, because not everybody is articulate enough to engage in a debate. I get that. So debating isn't for everybody. But if you're going to do many media appearances, the least you could do is be willing to go on interviews that you're going to be challenged to a much greater extent by somebody who actually knows the information, and he's unwilling. And I would say Andrew Fox is in the same exact category. Very similar narrative, constantly pointed out on why it's wrong, will never make a correction, and will not engage in a debate on it. So, and I take actually a personal issue with people like Andrew Fox and John Spencer. I am more understanding when my fellow Israelis are unable to see the humanity in Palestinians. I get that because they're involved in a conflict. It's very hard to be empathetic to those you deem your enemy. It's very hard. I urge my fellow Israelis to have this empathy, but it's very hard. People like John Spencer and Andrew Fox, they don't have real skin in the game. They're taking advantage of what's happening to promote themselves. They're denying an atrocity and spreading misinformation in a conflict that does not really personally affect them for their own personal gain. It's to put it bluntly, it's disgusting behavior. It's absolutely disgusting behavior. And again, I'm putting this on air. John Spencer and Andrew Fox are invited on for a live stream any day of the week. I would love to speak to them. I would even agree to go easy on them if that's what they would want, but I don't think they'd be willing. So, Vosh Hate Watcher, I hope that clarifies. Critical thinking over doctrine. Adar, the way you debate is how everyone should engage. You're a breath of fresh air. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. So Sam is asking, did you ever go on Jake Shields? So actually, I've never spoken about that publicly. I told you that when we had lunch, but I read it publicly, so it means I'm ready to talk about it. I've actually been talking to Jake Shields about being on a show. He actually called me this morning. We were going to talk to just see if it makes sense. He just wants to see if the conversation will be interesting enough. So I wasn't available when he called, and then I had the stream. So I'm going to call him back after the stream to see if we can make something happen. And I know that one will be controversial because he's a very controversial figure and he promotes a lot of anti-Jewish stuff. I get it. But, those who have been watching the show recognize that, or know that at least my philosophy on this is we should engage with these ideas, especially if they're becoming more popular, right? Like, I could see a case being made that don't engage. Like, what's the point of engaging on a fringe topic that nobody is interested in, that nobody's talking about? Is it a good use of time? For example, like 2 years ago, I had Claire Caw on, and she was making the case for secular Quranism, that the West as well as Israel should follow the Quran, but in a secular way. Interesting idea, highly unrealistic in my opinion. No one's talking about it. I can see the case that that's not even a worthwhile conversation. Yet I enjoyed speaking to her. But speaking to Jake Shields, I mean, a big name who's constantly promoting different anti-Jewish narratives. I think there's a lot of value there, and I think we could actually. I'm pretty sure we could find common ground. I think on Israel we would have a fair bit more agreement. On the Jewish question, more disagreement. But at least based on our texting, there seems to be some. It seems that there's a mutual interest in doing this in good faith. So I will update you all if that actually comes to fruition.
Before I go, I just wanted to ask: did you happen to catch the news about internal sources saying that Netanyahu is really ill and is about to retire in February? And Sarah Netanyahu is currently in Miami preparing the house for them because this is where they're going to live once he retires, to go through medical procedures.
Interesting. Okay, I did not hear that. I heard a different theory. I heard that Sarah Netanyahu did not return to Israel, and there was speculation, and again, this could all be rumor, but there was speculation that her and Yair, Bibi's son, or their son, they were livid at him for accepting the ceasefire deal, and it created a rift, so she didn't want to return home. But you're giving a competing theory to why she did not return to Israel.
No, he's preparing. It was obvious that he's going to retire to the United States, most likely to Miami, Florida. It makes sense. The thing about him being really ill that was discovered during his last surgery, this is something that I did not know, but apparently this is going to be his ticket out of the country.
Interesting. Right. He did have his surgery. So you're saying, okay, so he may have cancer or something like that.
And you will notice Bennett making a comeback to try to take his seat.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
well,
on that.
I'm going to lead by example and not cheer on somebody being sick, even though he's one of the people I despise the most in this world. In fact, I'll never forgive him for what he did the past 15 months, for how many of our own he sacrificed only to kill the children of
you
our
know
neighbors.
What? This is something that might be able to unite Israelis and Palestinians. Their hate to Benjamin Netanyahu. They'll be cheerful. There's going to be a massive celebration across borders around the world once he retires.
Well, that's for certain. But isn't it if this speculation turns out to be true, it's actually quite sad that the reason he lost power was because he got sick and not because the Israeli public got sick of him, or at least enough of the Israeli public got sick of him. So
that happens to dictators, man. They normally only lose power by this kind of means.
Yeah. Callisto, are you hopping off now, Zohar?
Unless there's something urgent.
No. I'll do a few more Q&A and then I'll hop off as well. But thanks for joining. This has been great. It's been a while since we've caught up. So
no worries, man.
And by the way, Adar, I want to invite you to our new Discord server, because we're building this strong community on Discord. So then the day our platform is launched, we already have a community that will be our earliest adopters. So I'm going to drop this for everybody. Whoever's here, I'd love for you all to join the Discord. We're already doing over a dozen conversations a week. Israelis, Palestinians, people from all over the world are having these conversations, over a dozen a week on Discord. So I would love for you all to join.
Send this through, because I'm part of a larger community in the diaspora that are having these conversations between different Muslim and Jewish communities abroad. So I think they will be very interested to know about this stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I sent it. You'll see it in the chat. Feel free to share it with whoever. And those of you now, I'd love for you all to join as well. Thank you, Zohar. We'll talk soon.
No worries. All the best. Bye-bye.
Cool. Let's see. Callistos Cali, this is a good point. Even if people dispute the death toll, isn't the infrastructure damage and destruction kind of obvious? Yeah, even if we didn't have verifiable data coming out of Gaza, and again, the verifiable data, the Ministry of Health releases a list every few months. These names exist in the Palestinian Population Registry, which Israel has full access to. So if there is any meaningful disparity in the data, like fake names being added, then we would hear about it from Israel. Right? Israel, a low-level bureaucrat in the Ministry of Interior, can check and see that they're not just making stuff up. So that can give us the basis to trying to understand the death toll. It's, again, because it tells you how many children have been killed. It tells you women and elderly that have been killed. It helps you. With that, you can get a range estimate of civilians that have been killed. Now, people want to dispute that, but even if we didn't have verifiable data, seeing the amount of infrastructural damage and just the amount of firepower that's been used in Gaza, I don't see why people have trouble believing those numbers, that 50,000 civilians could have been killed with that amount of firepower. Like, why is that hard to believe? So, Callistos, I think you make a good point. And then what people like to do is they like to find a photo of like Mosul that had a lot of infrastructural damage, or Fallujah that had a lot of infrastructural damage, and show that what we're seeing in Gaza is normal. But that's there's what logical fallacy is that? There's some fallacy being committed there, right? Because I guess it's similar to the cherry picking fallacy, where you cherry pick the data that's convenient to your argument. So here they're cherry picking a single photo that shows one neighborhood in Mosul that got destroyed. But you need to look at all of Mosul to get a sense of the destruction done there. When you compare what happened in Gaza to any other city, nothing comes close. Nothing comes close. I would say that the one that would come close would be Dresden, which was after the fact considered to be immoral and a war crime and unnecessary. So like, and after Dresden, after World War II in general, we passed international law to avoid just this from happening. So yeah, it's new levels of infrastructural damage. Yeah, let me, I see there's discussion on the death toll in Gaza. Let me give the breakdown. So, Poppy, it's not true that there hasn't been any counting since June. There's still daily counting. The last list was released in end of December. A lot of people don't know this because they never released it in the Ministry of Health Telegram group. I don't know why. They released it in the WhatsApp group. So I myself missed this new list being released for months. I didn't think there was a list after June. But the new list has 42,000 names on it. So these are names that we know have been confirmed killed, either direct reports from their family members, or they've been identified by a doctor in the hospital. The overwhelming majority are people who have been identified in the hospital, not family reports. Now, we have reason to believe that there's very few civilians on this list. Very few combatants on this list. One is, if you look at like the highest level combatants, like the names we know of people who are clearly combatants, many of them are not on the list. And there's also reason to believe that they're just not being brought to hospitals or their deaths are not being reported to this at the same rate as civilians. And when you actually look at the demographic of the list, you have 58% are women, children, and elderly. If you assume that civilian men are dying at the same rate as civilian women, then 78% of the list are civilians. But we have reason to believe that civilian men are dying at a higher rate than women. This happens in virtually all conflicts. Men are confused for being combatants. They often take more risks, like getting food, water, and aid for their family members. So it's actually consistent through all conflicts that civilian men die at a higher rate. We have reason to believe this is happening in Gaza to potentially an even larger extent. We see that there's a war against military-aged men. We see this by the mass arrests happening. And we know many of those being arrested are innocent because they get released shortly after. Some of them get released after they were abused. We also know that Hamas doesn't always wear uniform, right? So there's a suspicion of people not in uniform. But even if you're a combatant and you're not walking around with a gun, it's still a war crime to kill somebody who's a combatant without a gun, right? So shooting somebody unarmed because you suspect they might be a militant is clearly a war crime. And we know in many instances, these are civilians being shot. So when you take into account that men are dying at a higher rate than women, we could conclude that the range, these 42,000 names that we have access to, it's anywhere from 78% to close to 100% civilians. Whatever combatants have been killed are not being added to the list. I think that's an honest assessment that I have not gotten any credible pushback on. I'm still waiting for somebody to debate that premise. Now, we're still getting daily updates of the death toll, but the daily update is not the daily names and ID numbers. So one can say that this is not verifiable yet, but the daily death has been consistent for many months now. So there's no reason to believe that these numbers aren't real. So right now we have, let me just open the latest report from the Ministry of Health. 46,899 confirmed deaths. Now, what we don't know, and this is 83 in the last 24 hours. So imagine we signed a ceasefire and 83 more civilians have been killed. We don't know how many have not been accounted for, who's buried under rubble, who's missing, who just hasn't been reported. Imagine a situation where the hospitals are over capacity. Let's say somebody dies. Why even bring them to a hospital? You might just bury them in your backyard, right? These people might not be reported yet. So we don't know how many are unaccounted for, and we don't know how many have been killed from indirect death, malnutrition, disease. We know some amount have died of indirect deaths from the collapse of the healthcare system. And we know they're not being added to the list. And the way we know they're currently not being added to the list is because indirect deaths are primarily elderly and very young. So 0 to 1 year olds are most likely to die indirectly, and very old. So if they were being added, you would actually see spikes in the data amongst 0-year-olds and amongst elderly. We don't see those spikes. So it's fair to conclude that indirect deaths have not yet been counted. And again, some people speculate that the majority of the deaths will be indirect. That's what the controversial Lancet report claimed. And I've seen people give legitimate critiques to the Lancet report, that their references of comparing it to other conflicts are just weren't good comparisons for XYZ. I don't think the majority of deaths are indirect. So I don't know, have there been 1,000 indirect deaths? Have there been 10 or 20,000? I really have no idea. This is something we'll only know once the dust settles. So I would say a lower estimate for the civilian death toll, that is a safe lower estimate. I say we could say 50,000. If we want to be very safe, we could say 45,000. The higher number could be easily over 100,000 if indirect deaths really have accounted for a lot. Anti-Semitism on the pro-Palestinian side makes it hard for Western Jews to listen to legitimate critiques as well. This is from Critical Thinking Over Doctrine. Yeah, that's such a tricky one, right? Palestinian society, I think it's fair to assume that it might be the most anti-Semitic society in the world, but that's to be expected. They've literally been in conflict with the Jewish state for 100 years. In fact, if you didn't have immense amounts of anti-Semitism in Palestinian society, that would be something worth studying and understanding. It's expected that would be the case. The same way Israelis are one of the most Islamophobic societies in the world. You generally are going to have hate or disdain or fear of people you've been in conflict with. This is very natural, right? So it's not, and what's not natural is to say I've been in conflict with the Jewish state, but that's just Israel, not Jews. Like it's so easy to conflate this when this is called the Jewish state, the state for the Jews. We use Jewish symbolism. Clearly, that conflation is going to happen. It's unavoidable. So I don't blame Palestinian society for being anti-Semitic. The same way I don't blame Israeli society for being Islamophobic. I'm not justifying it. We certainly need to rid ourselves from this hate of groups. But I think we need to be understanding, like people respond to certain things in certain ways. There's only a limited amount of reactions you have, or actions you have to, there's only a certain amount of reactions you have to any action, right? So like you put people in certain environmental conditions, you could predict certain things about their views, at least at certain averages. But critical thinking, what you're saying is true, right? Because when people abroad see this anti-Semitism, it turns them away from the cause, and it's like, how can I be supportive of Palestinians? They hate me, right? So I get it. It's challenging, and there's no simple solution. And then Poppy says, unfortunately, this is why it's extremely important for Palestinian groups to crack down on anti-Semitic rhetoric coming from within their ranks. 100%, right? 100%, especially in the West, where you have much less of an excuse to be anti-Semitic. For these movements to have more legitimacy, they need to root out those that are delegitimizing him with hateful rhetoric, right? And I think you can. The second you praise Hamas as heroes, you also lose legitimacy to a lot of people, right? There's a way to be very anti-Israel and what Israel's doing, and even be sympathetic towards Palestinian resistance, but you don't need to make Hamas out to be heroes. That's also going to turn a lot of people away. Critical thinking says, I see a lot of Jews of all ages begin to question because of Israel's actions, but it would be more strategic to be careful of anti-Semitism for more Jews to critique Zionism. Yeah, so interestingly, I've noticed this as well. I've gotten more and more messages from people saying that they realize what's happening in Gaza is wrong, but they don't feel comfortable speaking out because they don't want to create more hate against Israel. So on one hand, they love Israel. They see the importance for Israel. But they recognize Israel to be doing something wrong, but they don't want to add to all the hate against Israel. And this is a critique I've gotten a lot. They're saying, even if I believe what I believe, why am I supporting those who want to destroy us and aligning with them on the critique? And then others have also said they just don't want to deal with the backlash they would get for doing this critique. And I get it. I don't think we should expect people to need to speak up. It's one of my biggest critiques with let's call it woke social justice, that they have this thing where they say speech is violence, but they also say silence is violence. So essentially what they're saying is you can't keep quiet and you can't say certain things. You need to say what we want you to say. Very controlling. Almost psychopathic conduct, that framing, if you ask me. So no, speech is not, silence is not violence. If for whatever reason you don't want to take on the toll of activism, that is within your right, and you shouldn't feel shame doing so. And people ask me why, like when everybody says I'm now aligning myself with jihadists and anti-Semites, in a sense, there's truth to that. We're giving similar critique of Israel. There's a difference. I want to see Israel thrive. I don't want to see any harm caused to anybody living on the land. So we're certainly not aligned there, but we're aligned in our critique of Israel. But that is going to happen, right? If I were to critique the Nazis, right, in the 30s and 40s, is that me being pro-Soviet? Does that mean I'm a Soviet sympathizer, right? That's just not the right way to look at it. You can agree on certain things with people who are not great people or don't have the best views, right? Just because you align on some things doesn't mean you align on everything. So to me, this is just seen as like call it a low IQ retort to something legitimate. If you don't like what I'm saying, challenge me on the merit. Don't try to attribute what I'm saying to jihadists or anti-Semites. And that too is a logical fallacy. I sometimes will read through the logical fallacies just to sharpen myself on them, and it's very much helped me to identify them very quickly, but I can't always identify the name of each fallacy when I see it. And you know what? I am mad at the education system because the amount of bullshit that we learned in school that I have not used since was a waste of time. We should have known all the logical fallacies by the time we're in like middle school. We should know all the cognitive biases, right? We should learn communication skills, emotional intelligence, critical thinking. This is the stuff you're going to use every single day of your life. It's not that I don't see value in learning algebra. It's just I haven't used algebra since I graduated high school. Never used it. Did it help me think in certain ways? I'm sure, but there's many other ways to achieve that. And everything I just mentioned is going to be way more useful day to day than algebra. And again, algebra teaches you how to think, but there's many ways to do that. Why not have like a few games of chess every day? Chess is a great game to keep you sharp and teach you strategy and memory and planning ahead. Word problems, riddles, like these are all way more applicable ways to teach people critical thinking. Mutinous 11 says, Adar, you mentioned you're an entrepreneur. Which industry exactly, and what are you building? So the first company I founded, it's been like 10 or 12 years now, 11 years. That is a company called Alpha Music. It's based out of Israel. We provide businesses with the music subscription service. So let's say you go in a store, people are playing music. That store actually needs to pay royalties to play that music. Even if it's off YouTube, Spotify, even if it's a disc you're playing, you need to pay royalties because you're using it for consumer purposes. So what we understood is that most stores actually don't need top 40 mainstream music to create the optimal atmosphere for their store. In fact, often vocals in certain stores isn't good because the music's too low and you can't hear the vocals, and it just creates an uncomfortable experience. So we noticed that stores aren't playing optimal music, and we noticed that most stores don't need top 40 music. We also understood, and I used to own a record label as well. Me and my partner in the record label, we launched Alpha Music together. So we understood that there's so much amazing music from up and coming artists, and they don't care about getting a few dollars in royalty. They want exposure. So what we did is we collected tens of thousands of royalty-free music from up and coming artists. They waive their rights to royalties through our system in order to get exposure. And then we curate high quality playlists for different businesses so that they not only get a good music solution, they save money because they don't need to pay royalties. They just pay us anywhere from a third to half of what they're paying in royalties. So that's one company. I haven't been active there in like 8 years, but I'm a silent partner. And actually, breaking news, just a few weeks ago, I got an offer by my partners. They offered to buy me out, and it looks like I'm going to accept their offer, and I will be selling my shares there. So yay, congrats. And one of the reasons I'm selling my shares is because I'm not convinced this business is AI resistant. AI generated music may dominate the music scene in a few years, and it very well may be the case that you don't need to pay anybody to have music at your store. You could just use some AI platform and they'll create your playlist, and maybe you're paying like $9.99. So I'm not convinced we're AI resistant, so I'm going to cash out. The second business I launched 2.5 years ago, that's Grateful Giraffes. That's actually what brought me from Tel Aviv to LA. Grateful Giraffes is a community and lifestyle brand focused on human well-being. The idea is to not build products and services like a regular brand, but to first build this global community, give ownership of the brand to the community, thereby aligning incentives amongst everybody. And the idea is once we have enough alignment amongst, let's say, 1,000 plus exceptional individuals who all have skin in the game, we could release products, services, and experiences together as a collective, giving us a competitive advantage. So it's a community first lifestyle brand. I'm still active. I'm just more so an advisor there. I've been doing that full time for the past 2.5 years. And then a few months ago, I got an offer from Adam Becker, who I know through this channel, to join him in headon.ai. And so this would be the third company. And I'm still very passionate about Grateful Giraffes, but headon.ai is really an opportunity to combine not only something in the AI space, but one of my greatest passions in dialogue and peace building into an entrepreneurial venture. And so that's my main focus now. So I moved to an advisory position, Grateful Giraffes, and I'm full-time all in on headon.ai. And the vision there is to build a platform using an AI facilitator that can scale civil discourse, where we could have a situation where millions of people, tens of millions of people from around the world are coming together to have these conversations. So that's my primary focus. So yeah, I guess I've been doing these streams for a while, but I don't talk all too much about that stuff. So now you know a little bit more. Sam says this is a fallacy of incomplete data. Is that? Is that an official fallacy, or is that like a name you're giving it? Okay, so they're saying that's cherry picking, also known as cherry picking. Yeah, cool. Good to see you, Sam. Oh, that was in reference to Sam saying peace. Adar, see you next week. I sometimes forget that not some people just listen. Not everybody's watching this live, so I need to read the comments before responding to them. Noted. Okay. Gandalf, Mr. Potter. It's 2025, and Adar still won't do a video just about entrepreneurship and his journey. I mean, I would if I thought people were interested in that. And in fact, it seems because the main focus has been Israel Palestine. Whenever I deviate to a different topic, it gets much less views. And again, I'm okay with that. Like I clearly there's something I value much more than views, and that's impact. So if my primary focus was viewership, I would just do viral content. I could sell out and take like a very clear anti-Zionist stance and blow up, being former IDF soldier who's now an anti-Zionist. But I'd prefer to provide nuance on all these topics and really be thoughtful in how I approach this. But that comes at the expense of views, always. So it's going to be a slower growth doing it this way, but that's okay. I'm okay with the slower growth. So I'm okay to touch on other topics, but I did observe that when I touch on another topic, the views are much less. So I don't know how much interest there would be on me just talking about entrepreneurial stuff, but let us know in the comments if you'd like to hear more about that. Callisto says, how has the LA fires affected you? Well, I booked it to Mexico just because the air is toxic. But so we have a large community in LA. We've been there community building for Grateful Giraffes for 2 years. So we have 500 community members in LA, and at least a dozen have lost their homes. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely affected a lot of friends. I've stayed at homes that have been reduced to ashes. We've done events at homes that have been reduced to ashes. So yeah, it's sad. It's sad. And let's actually talk about that, because there's been some things that are irking me, right? We still don't know exactly what could have been done to prevent that. Clearly, there were mistakes that were made. Clearly, people need to take responsibility for what happened. But very quickly was there this narrative that this is a result of DEI. Now, this is just people being opportunistic and trying to promote an agenda they want. And I understand the desire to do that, but there's a real cost in doing this. This is part of a greater trend that whenever something goes wrong, people will try to see, are there women in power, and then blame it on the fact that there's women in power. So there's actually something pretty misogynistic about going about things this way. The right way to do it is to identify what went wrong. And if what went wrong was somebody in a position of leadership was incompetent and they got their position because of DEI, you have a clear-cut case that DEI contributed to this. But I've yet to see compelling evidence that DEI is what resulted in these fires. In fact, it may be decades-long policy mistakes that have been made, and you could have had the most competent leaders in the world and they couldn't have done all too much about it. Again, I don't know. It might be a result of DEI. And I'm also somebody who prefers a meritocracy over DEI. I'm not a supporter of DEI. I don't think it's the right system. But we shouldn't be quick to blame policies we don't like because it's convenient, because the cost of that is fueling this idea that women are incompetent. And also there's these women who are in leadership positions now that are involved in the fire. They are getting all this blame, and it may be unnecessary blame, right? These women are dealing with the hardest challenge of their lives. And now people are potentially wrongfully accusing it of being their fault simply because they're women, right? That's obviously problematic. There was a clip of Joe Rogan unearthed from, I believe, July of 2024 saying something along the lines of, I have a firefighter friend, and he said, one day there'll be a fire in LA and the wind will just be wrong and there's nothing anybody can do about it. And the fact that this hasn't happened yet is simply luck. A firefighter told that to Joe Rogan months ago, right? So it doesn't seem like this was just a failure on whoever's in leadership now. It seems like this is a result of bad city planning and bad policy that's decades that's been in the making for decades now. So it's not right to just attribute this to individuals because they're women and because you don't like DI. It's sloppy, it's irresponsible, and there's a real cost to doing that. And in fact, so I don't know if you all know Kaizen. Elon Musk has been sharing his stuff a lot lately. So Kaizen's actually a friend of mine from LA. He's actually a member of the Grateful Drafts community. So he actually put out this critique of DI, and I wrote to him explaining my pushback. But it would actually be interesting to have Kaizen on for a conversation about just this topic, because he's also a very smart guy, engages in good faith. We agree, I imagine, on most things, but we do have some areas of disagreement. So this inspired me. I'm going to try to get Kaizen on for a stream. Poppy says, congrats, Adar. Wishing you so much success in your projects. Thank you so much. And guys, by the way, headon.ai, there's no guarantee for success, right? We're trying something very challenging. But our chance of success increases if we have a strong community that are going to help us build this, that are going to be our earliest adopters, that are going to relay feedback on how we can improve, who are going to help test the product and train the AI. We need this help. So I am inviting any viewer who wants to be involved. You are more than welcome to be involved. We'd love to have you join. Reach out to me or join the Discord, and that is the great way to get started. Nomad says, this, I guess, is relevant to what we're talking about earlier. Fallacy of you're right and you're wrong and I'm right. You know what? I'm not sure anybody's. I wonder if that's a fallacy that has an official name, but that is one of the most common ones I'm seeing today. And that's how you know you're onto something. When that's the response. Nope, you're wrong. Yep. Critical thinking goes, pro-Palestinian activists to be careful of genuine anti-Semitism, not realistic assessment of what is happening, such as scapegoating Jews as a source of oppression and such. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Gandalf, Mr. Potter says, not going to lie, something's off. The YouTube algorithm is unfair to your channel. Other channels with way less value get more exposure. I don't know if I'd be so quick to attribute to something unfair in the algorithm. I don't do like high quality pre-recorded content. Like a lot of people don't like the live stream stuff. It's, it's not for everybody. I think my approach also isn't for everybody. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be very easy for me to blame the slow growth on algorithm, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's what it is. But what is clear though, if I wasn't so busy and could really dedicate more time, I know with a very high degree of confidence that I could 10x the subscribers. Let's say like right now I decide that I'm gonna be full-time on content. I would say that this time next year we could hit 100,000 subscribers. I say that with a high degree of confidence. But both the fact that I don't do edited content because I'm not an editor, and I don't have much time to invest in this, it's been pretty decent growth. And again, the impact is what I care about most. And impact, the more views, the more the impact. But the thing that really keeps me motivated is that I for every hateful message I get a message of somebody saying they're inspired by this, or they've learned something new, or it's changed their perspective. And it's you have some channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and get a lot more views, but they're probably changing less minds. So I'd rather get 1,000 views and change 10 minds than get 1 million views and change 1 mind, right? So all good. Yeah, Gandalf, Mr. Potter says, yep, they saw black women and equated it to DI. No, you can be a qualified black woman and also be incompetent and do a bad job. Doesn't mean it's DI. And this is coming from somebody who's not a fan of DI. Yeah, exactly. That's my assessment as well. And also, let's be clear about something. It's not that we moved away from purely meritocracy to DI. We moved away, especially things like fire chiefs and stuff like that. A lot of that is connected to nepotism, right? So it's not like there's many institutions and a lot of them are government, like in the public sector, that are very heavily connected to who you know and who gets you in the door. So we didn't move. Maybe we moved a little bit away from meritocracy, but it's not like we were a purely meritocratic system and we moved to DEI. We were meritocracy mixed with nepotism, and now we've put a little more emphasis on DEI. So those who are critiquing DEI should also critique nepotism in these systems as well. But that's not as interesting, is it? Nomad says somebody listened to Joe Rogan podcast and decided to make it a reality. That's an interesting hypothesis. I mean, we do know that some of the fires were started by arson. We don't know if all of them were, but yeah, imagine a situation where someone saw crazy winds and they're like, let's light this shit. It's possible. I mean, you never know. It literally could have been like, imagine like some high schoolers fucking around in their backyard in the Pacific Palisades and they just light something, but the winds are strong. Next thing they know, the fire's out of control. Next thing they know, the neighborhood they grew up in is gone. I'm sure there's, well, if it was done intentionally out of a place of malice, I wonder how they feel about it. But if it was done accidentally, I'm sure these people are living with a lot of regret and pain. Gandalf, Mr. Potter says, if you want a great incentive these days, create a crypto token and with great tokenomics. Believers might be a lot more willing, but what do I know? I can see us launching some kind of a token at some point, whether through Head On or some other project. I worked in the Web3 space for years, so I'm quite informed about it. I'm just not. A lot of people force Web3 just for the sake of it. I don't want to force it. We'll do something Web3 when it actually solves a problem and doesn't create more friction for users. So yeah, I'm for it, but I'm the tech, the infrastructure, it's not seamless enough. The adoption is not quite there yet. Callistos Cali says, how fluent are you in Hebrew? I am fluent conversationally. I will say though, because I don't do live streams in Hebrew, if I were to now need to talk about the conflict in Hebrew, it would be much harder for me. Just because I don't practice it. So I'm fluent in Hebrew, conversational. But when it gets into like deeper political or intellectual concepts, I just can't navigate nearly as well. And I still do have, I have an American accent. Well, it's not an American accent. I have some kind of an accent when I speak Hebrew that is often hard to determine what it is, because it's not a traditional American accent. People pick up on it and then ask me where I'm from because they can't tell. Critical thinking goes, DI discourse is problematic, but we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need a more sophisticated analysis and build something else. Yeah, I agree. Did I learn Hebrew in America as well? No mass. And then Papa says, were you born in Israel or did you move there as an adult? No, so I was born in New York to an Israeli father and an American mother. I moved to Israel when I was 18, specifically to join the army. I was a staunch and proud right-wing Zionist growing up. I was put in my head from a young age by my father that, that's what you do. You turn 18, you join the IDF. That's what my father did. That's what my uncles did. That's what my grandfather did. That's what it means to love your country. I was also a very big troublemaker growing up. They didn't let me walk at my high school graduation. I barely graduated high school. So to me, it was pretty clear that I just go. Moved to Israel, joined the IDF. And then over the subsequent years, both in the IDF and years after, I started to see things differently. And I got released from the military in 2011 after 3 years of service. And then in 2014, I started writing Facebook statuses, trying to humanize both sides, and, have been doing things here and there connected to activism and peace building since 2014. But never super seriously. It's always been, when I have some free time, I'll do something. And now I consider myself a digital nomad. So now I was in LA for the past 2.5 years for Grateful Drafts, but head on I can really do from anywhere. So I'm looking for remote places where there's good weather, good internet, and where I'm not too distracted, because that's when I'm most productive. So I've been checking out different cities to see if I could find that place. I'm now in Mizunte, Mexico, which is the southern coast of Mexico. Not quite that place. It's a little too hot. The internet's a little too spotty. So not, yeah. But so next week I'll be in Mexico City. I'll find my spot. And then in a few months, I'm going to go back to Israel. And then in the summer, I'll probably spend in New York. So I'm on the road. Super Kripke says, come to Medellin. Yo, I've been considering it. Are you in Medellin? I'll put it this way. I'd say there's a decent chance I'm there in the next few months. So hit me, message me if you're there. So Papa goes, so you went from Kahanis to naive peacenik. What a change, huh? Yeah, I don't know if I ever supported expulsion. In fact, no. Certainly, I did not understand the Palestinian narrative. Didn't have much empathy for them, but I was never hateful towards them. I never thought the displacement or killing them is wrong. In fact, I remember when I was my first month in the army, I heard a fellow soldier saying that if he had the opportunity, he would just shoot civilians, right? And I challenged him on that point. I thought that was an abhorrent view, even back then. And then there was a time when I was serving in the West Bank, and 2 teenagers were arrested for throwing stones, and I was tasked with, they were blindfolded and zip tied in the back of a van until the next morning when we could bring them to the police so the police could process them. So I was tasked with checking on them every few hours to take them out of the van so they could pee or go to the bathroom, and I would bring them food. And when I brought them food, I brought them like hummus and pita, but I also brought them like some snacks, some desserts and stuff. And they got mad at me. They said, why am I giving them all these desserts? Why am I treating them nicely? So even then, I think there was some difference in how I viewed it than the average person. But yeah, I didn't see any. I thought Bibi was a good leader. You know, I thought it's good versus bad, right versus wrong. I didn't think we need to kill them, or hate them, but I thought we need to defend ourselves against them. And interestingly, it was in the army when I started to have a shift, right? I was looking at, there was a poster with Hamas training techniques, and you see Hamas soldiers crawling through sand. And I'd been crawling through sand that same day in training. And I looked at this Hamas soldier, and I actually saw myself in him. And I asked myself, I said, if I was born in Gaza, would that be me? Does his family view him as a hero and me as a terrorist? Is that possible? And now this is very like basic and intuitive stuff that I understand. But at the time, it was kind of like a profound moment that I started reflecting on. And that didn't change my views overnight. It took many years for that to transform into how I see things today. So it took a few years after being released from the army where I developed, call it a more balanced worldview, at least related to the conflicts. I also took some psychedelics after the IDF, which many report that expanding your consciousness. Do I attribute my shift to psychedelics? It's hard to know, but psychedelics do give you the sense that we're all connected, we're all one, we're all together. So you could see how having that experience can shift how you view other humans, right? And in fact, it very well may be that one of the solutions to conflict is just give them those mushrooms, just do it up big. There are people working on it. MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, is doing some clinical studies with Israelis and Palestinians, and they've actually gotten some interesting results. I'm in touch with Rick Doblin, the founder of MAPS. I actually might work with him. We've been in touch. I need to see if I could find time, but I kind of want to help him with this because we're 2 very traumatized populations, and traumatized people are less rational, less empathetic. Okay, so traumatized people are not good at resolving conflicts, but that's the population we have, traumatized population. So exploring ways to heal the trauma, I think, is essential. And there's more and more data coming out that psychedelics is healing trauma in a way that Western medicine currently can't. So I'm super supportive of further studying that. And with that, I want to say psychedelics are not for everybody. And if you do decide to use them, do them responsibly. And you know what? If you're considering trying them for the first time and want to ask me about it or pick my brain, feel free to reach out. Happy to talk. How old were the two teens? Poppy asks. I would say between the age of 15 and 17. Super Kripke says, when Gaza opens up to journalists and fact finders, Israel is toast as the extent of their atrocities is revealed. I mean, that very well may be the case. And to me, this is why I saw a great incentive for Netanyahu to never want to leave, to kind of make this a permanent thing, to ensure that that can never happen. But it seems that that's not what's happening. Oh, Poppy with a banger. From the river to the sea, everyone takes LSD. I like that. Adar's next entrepreneurship adventure, buying huge land and growing mushrooms and psychedelics in the West Bank. Interesting idea. And believe it or not, Sam Bland, who's on the show, his family owns a lot of land in the West Bank. And Sam Bland is also a successful entrepreneur. So if there's any partner to do that, we have our guy. The thing is, currently, it's illegal both in Israel and the Palestinian territories. It's more accepted culturally in Israeli society, especially in places like Tel Aviv. But it's still very frowned upon in Palestinian society, to the extent that there's a Palestinian guy, and I don't even know if he would want me to drop his name publicly, but he's the Palestinian facilitator. He brings these Palestinians to do this stuff, and I've invited him to do a stream, but he doesn't. He says it's too dangerous talking about this publicly. So there's still a certain cultural barrier that's making this harder. Callistus Cali says, can Israelis drink alcohol? Because alcohol is prohibited in Islam. Yeah, not only can Israelis drink alcohol, it's considered a mitzvah being a good deed at certain times. So it's a mitzvah to drink wine on Shabbat, on the Sabbath. So that's every Friday night. It's a mitzvah to drink wine on Passover. You're meant to actually have 4 glasses of wine on Passover. And on Purim, which happens to be in the month of Adar, which is the month of joy, which is not the month I was born in, interestingly, but I was named after that month. So in Purim, it's actually a mitzvah not only to drink wine, but to get drunk. So I have most of my extended family is religious. Many of them are settlers. And they don't get drunk at all throughout the year. But on Purim, they get hammered, like blackout drunk. That's just that's part of the tradition. So yeah, drinking's fun. And then there's certain sects of Judaism that have more of a drinking culture. So Chabad are bigger drinkers than I would say most of the other sects of Judaism. And then you have the Braslav, which is a sect. Maybe Braslav is a subsect of no. The Nachmanim is a subsect of Breslov, I believe, and the Nachmanim love smoking weed. At least many of them. So there's interesting differences between the sects. Anyways, I think we will wrap it up. This was fun. This was good. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to a different city. I'm going to Puerto Escondido on tomorrow. I don't know the Wi-Fi situation there, so I'm not going to commit to a live stream until I'm stable and with good Wi-Fi. So I don't know when it will be, but we should have a live stream, at least hopefully 2 live streams next week. And this is one of the cool things. My role at Head On is really to help build this community and fundraising and other stuff. But building this community is one of my main focuses. So the more content I do, the more it helps grow the community. So I'm going to be doing more live streams now. So I finally have an opportunity to combine the content with my day-to-day work. So I think I'm going to try to be doing 3 live streams a week. So I'd also love recommendations for what kind of content you would like to see, recommendations for guests, topics, etc. And prepare for more of these. And for those who want to join the Discord, I will drop a link now. We are doing every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 p.m. EST and at 8 p.m. EST. we're doing 2 hours of conversations. So, and you don't even need to speak; you could just tune in. But we're really picking it up in terms of the amount of conversations we're doing. So I'm going to drop the link, and I'd love for you to join. Gandalf, Mr. Potter, you'd like to see a travel vlog? Oh man, I don't know how to. It just would require so much editing and doing these cool cuts and stuff like that. Is it the best use of my time? Let me think about it. Maybe I'll do one as an experiment and see if there's any interest in this travel blog, and if it's not taking up too much of my time. And if we have any video editors who want to help, reach out. We don't have all too much budget right now, but if you want to help in exchange for, there's different things we could do. We could do help for exchange for equity, and then once we fundraise, we could pay out some amount of money. There's different things we could do. So if you do want a video edit or help in any other way, please let me know. Anyways, signing off. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. Much love to you all.